Prynawn da, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this NAHT briefing for members within our school settings. The meeting will be brief and is an opportunity for us to speak to you directly. I am pleased to be joined tonight by Laura Dole, Director of NAHT, and Rob Kelshall, National Secretary. We are also expecting Paula Porter, Director of Representation and Advice, and Nick Brook, Deputy General Secretary. My name is Laura Towns and I am the Cymru Wales Organiser for NAHT, and I'll be facilitating this evening's event. I am pleased to confirm that this event is being simultaneously translated into Welsh, so if you would like to listen in Welsh, then please click on the Chinese button at the bottom of your screen. Again, I apologise, but the Welsh option is not yet available on Zoom. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of our panel this evening, and if you would have any questions, then please use the question section as opposed to the chat function. The chat function is for you to comment and let us know if you are having any issues accessing the broadcast, and my colleague Natalie is on hand to assist. And we'll also be adding relevant links throughout the broadcast, so please make sure you select everyone when entering your comments here. We are recording this evening's broadcast and this will be available on our website in the next day or so, and Natalie will be placing a number of links throughout the broadcast, including details of Welsh Government guidance and services available to you, our members. We appreciate you sharing and commenting on our events and social media. However, we would like to request that if posting photos of any digital broadcast, you are mindful not to include comments from others which appear in the chat function. During these challenging times, sharing personal views with like-minded others can be empowering, but we would prefer that those comments to stay in the community of our audience. Thank you for your understanding. Please make sure that you post questions as mentioned in the question and answer section at the bottom of the screen. This will allow you, our members, to vote in order of popularity, and we will get through as many as we can. So without further ado, I would like to pass you over to Laura Dole, Director, for opening remarks and update since our previous broadcast. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thanks again for taking the time out to join us this afternoon. I want to say before I start that we have been inundated with your questions following Friday's announcements. Your views are crucial in building a strong and robust defence as members, so thank you very much for contacting us. This is understandably a very anxious time for you all, and I appreciate that the uncertainty around foundation phase is weighing heavily on your minds at the moment. I want to reiterate to you all that you are not alone. We as your union are here to do all we can to make sure that your voices are heard and that Welsh Government listens to the profession. Some of you may have seen from our press coverage over the weekend that we have set out our concerns clearly. We are not against the wider return to school, and neither are you as our members. Second only to parents, our members understand the impact school closures are having on the education, health and well-being of learners. But school leaders must be given the tools you need to make sure that the return is as safe as possible and a sustainable one. We have concerns around the equivocal information presented in the latest TAG report published on Friday. Despite the head teacher presentation briefing on Friday morning, it does not support a wider return for foundation phase. It presents various sets of data that is both encouraging in terms of community infection rates and also worrying in terms of the unknown around the new variant and high hospital admission rates, just to name just a few things. The Welsh Government has made a judgment call on this data. We want to know what basis they are doing that, and we want to know the clear decision-making process that they went through. We are now less than 2 weeks away from February the 22nd, and when you take into account that next week is half term, you're all supposed to be off, we are right to call the government out for reneging on its 2-week promise. Right now, you still do not have the updated operational guidance on which to plan a wider return. Trade unions have been given a draft, but the draft is vague. It gives little detail and no detail at all on expectations, and is already being challenged by the teaching and support staff unions. Without that document, you will be placed in an impossible position. Education Minister Kirsty Williams has promised £5 million to support the wider return to school for additional staff, but she's provided no details on how or when you can access that money. Meetings with the Welsh Government will continue this week on the guidance and a host of other issues, and I will update you throughout the week on my progress. But you deserve better. Your schools deserve better than a rushed and ill-planned wider return. We want the wider return of schools to be successful, but we do not believe in pushing ahead with an arbitrary date when we still do not have all the information we have asked for. I want to assure you that we will continue to meet with officials and try and find a way through that enables you to do what you excel at, what you love, and that's leading your schools. Over the last few days, we have considered a range of next steps as a union that we can take to support you. One of these is around a legal challenge to hold the Welsh Government to account. School leaders are responsible for the health and safety of their settings. You have got a vested interest, and it is not unreasonable for us to challenge them on that basis. To that end, I'm going to pass over to our National Secretary, Rob, who's going to fill you in a little bit more on next steps. Rob?
Cheers, Laura. Thanks very much. And it's great to see so many people on the call this evening. I just want to say also a huge thank you from the National Union for everything you're doing in this global pandemic to keep our children and young people safe. And the sterling work that you're doing really just shines a light on the dedication of public service workers. And I think it's something that we should all celebrate. However, we find ourselves back in a situation where government pronouncements are going to leave school leaders yet again in an impossible position. When the Welsh Government and ministers make announcement, they forget that the real challenges about the wider reopening of schools is vested in that local and regional response, the challenges that you have as school leaders to make sense of their guidance or sometimes lack of guidance. When it comes to the assessment of risk and the operational challenge associated with the wider reopening of schools, this is not just a matter for Welsh Government officials or ministers, and that's where today we've written to directors of every local authority in Wales, imploring them to work with the NHT and its school leaders to make sense of this guidance and only work towards the wider reopening of schools when we believe that the conditions are right. And that's not to say that we stand in the way. And again, just echoing the point that Laura made, we all share the aspirations to see our children and young people back in the classrooms. But also we know too that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. There are different challenges in different parts of the nation, and we've got to have that factored in when it comes to moving forward. And when we look at the medical and scientific evidence, it's still very, very opaque. And the Chief Medical Officer's letter published today, I think, raises more questions than answers. He talks about ed room that is found in terms of capacity being dedicated to a phased return. However, the question is whether the ed room is sufficient to enable this. And if you look at the latest TAG report, it says it's not yet possible to say this. So again, huge questions and anxieties. So, NHT, we bring the support of the National Union to all of our members in NHT Cymru. What we want to do is, again, work with local authority directors in moving forward with this. And certainly you'll hear from Paula very shortly in terms of the steps we'll be taking tomorrow, I think it is, Paula, in regards to pre-action protocol, which Paula will explain. But I just want to end my comments by saying this, that whatever decision school leaders make in NHT Cymru going forward, NHT has your back. We will support our members, to the nth degree, and we'll certainly ensure again that we hold the government to account and that we will work with people to make this a reality. So, Paula, if you want to take us through the legal steps, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Rob. I'd also like to take the opportunity to say that legal action is always a last resort for a union. And it's unfortunate that yet again we find ourselves in a position where we are having to consider this as a tactic to use against the government in Wales. And we do that in view of the equivocal nature of the TAG report. And there's no doubt about it. I know that the government would have you believe that it is unequivocal, but I think that any reasonable person considering the evidence contained in that report will agree that unfortunately it is equivocal. And we consider that there are some very serious legal questions yet to be answered by government in Wales. a key uncertainty is whether the government's position is that schools must reopen to pupils in the specified age groups, or whether the government would instead take the position that head teachers, governing bodies, or for that matter, local authorities, which is where the work that Rob is doing at the moment is so important, retain the power to decide whether to reopen schools based on their own assessment of risk in light of the circumstances at their own individual schools. And we say that this is a well-established convention, and indeed it is a position that the government must adopt in order that the risks for health and safety are considered very carefully by those on the ground and the people that know their own school, and they should have the authorities to make the decisions about safety in their school. And currently, faced with the position that we are with the government, that is far from clear. And that is why our proposed strategy is to take the first steps in a judicial review pre-action process by issuing a letter to the Welsh Government identifying these issues and requiring them to clarify their position so that we can decide the next steps forward on your behalf. And as I said right at the very beginning, this isn't something we do lightly, and we have very carefully considered our position, and we have looked for other ways to reach out to government and actually for them to see sense and for them to see the error of their ways in relation to this. But we have determined that unfortunately there is no alternative, and we will be taking those steps tomorrow morning on your behalf. Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you, Paula, very much for that. I'm not sure if anybody wanted to come in at this stage or if we would like to go. We have had a few questions submitted, and the first one is around having a very good relationship with local authority, and is this something that I could say to our director to keep her updated and offer our cooperation?
Yeah, I'll come in on that if you want. So Rob has already spoken a little bit about the letter that we've sent to local authority directors of education. We are mindful that we have some very good relationships with local authorities, and that in fact the most traction that we've got throughout the pandemic has been working closely with the local authority employers. Happy to provide some additional information. I think it was Tim, our branch secretary in Wrexham. Hello Tim, who's just posted that question. Happy to share that information with you, and anything that we can do to foster those good relationships, happy to share.
Thank you, Laura. The next question was in relation to a local authority expecting school settings to continue with the blended learning for those foundation phase children who choose not to attend the school setting. Do we have any advice or guidance around that, please?
I'm happy to come in on that question, just because it's one of many questions that we continue to pose to Welsh Government around expectations. So I spoke a little bit around the draft operational guidance that we've seen. It is unclear. It is unclear what the expectations are. It is unclear whether or not schools are expected to support remote learning for foundation phase pupils or not. Obviously, you will have spoken to a great many parents who I'm sure have got their own worries and concerns, and may or may not have been comforted if they've seen the TAG report. But they will be asking the very questions of you that you are asking us, and we in turn are asking of government, in that we don't have that information and we need it, because without that, we could well see a situation developing across Wales where parents choose not to send their children to school. That's the last thing that we want. We want a safe as possible return that is sustained. We don't want to see what we've seen before Christmas, which is children in and out of school. We know that that's not good for them. We know that it puts additional pressure on families and schools to be able to support them. But what we need from the government is some clear detail on expectations, because quite rightly, you cannot be expected to support a full foundation phase wider return and support children whose parents may have, for a variety of reasons, chosen to keep those children at home. That is unreasonable, and it can't happen. But one of those questions has been posed to government, and as yet we don't have an answer.
And I think just coming back on that, Laura, as well, you know, it just underlines that position we see that school leaders are yet again being put in an impossible position by a government who seems to be oblivious to those operational challenges that schools face, both with staff in terms of COVID infections and isolation, and all of the other asks right now of the profession. You know, they talk often about additional resources, but I know, you know, some of the promises that was made last term, the beginning of the new academic year, have not found their way down to schools, in many schools. And, you know, so we're having political pronouncements, but a complete lack of understanding or due regard to those real pressures that each and every one of you will be feeling now and as we go forward. And that, again, will put you in an impossible position. And that's why NEHT is using all means at our disposal to protect you, to support you, and again, to hopefully get common sense to prevail. If that isn't with the national government, well, hopefully it'll be with local education leaders, directors of education. So, you know, we will certainly circulate the correspondence gone to the directors both on Friday and of today, and, you know, implore leaders in your clusters and through NEHT representatives locally to work with those directors to, again, hopefully, you know, find a more pragmatic and sustainable way forward. Because the point we've always made is that if this is done in an inconsistent way, that we'll be back to square one. You know, we need to, you know, obviously work as much as we can to get a return to school for children and young people, but we need to do it in a sustainable way. We don't want to go back to what we had last year, where for one minute we're back in and then we're having to close schools down again, ultimately as a result of government's mishandling. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rob. And that kind of links on to the next question that's being asked, which is around concerns for staff resilience and staff stress. And this question goes on to say, you know, how can we support guidance and policymakers in understanding the challenges being experienced? And is there scope for speaking to school leaders who have experienced a high level of COVID cases and the challenges this presents? So, Laura, did you want to come in on that, Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is part of the well-being of everybody working in school has been on the agenda with Welsh Government since the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, yes, we hear a lot of warm words from the Minister and how she's very grateful for everything that schools are doing, and I'm sure that she is. We take her at her word. But yet again, it's not demonstrated in the actions of the government, is it? So we are now the Tuesday before half term, the Monday before half term, wishing the week away. We're a few days away from what should be your school holiday, and yet again, you know, you are going to be going into, I hate to say Wednesday, Thursday, with only then being given the information. At best, will be updated versions of what I've already seen. At worst, it will be what I've already seen, and we'll still have a host of unanswered questions. I think it's also fair to say that, you know, the actions of the government does not reflect in effect the views of a great many of the stakeholders. I mean, conversations are ongoing with the local government employers. We speak to ADU, we speak to WLGA. You know, there is a lot of concern and a lot of inconsistency, and I'm going to make the point, which we may come on to later, that, you know, although we are doing as best as we can when it comes to putting forward a public message, you know, the government is being very clear in its messaging that it is very much the trade unions that are standing in the way of a wider return, and that is simply not true. I've been in every meeting with all the education unions, and, you know, whatever differences that we have, we are united when it comes to a wider return to school, and that it's something that we all want. And I think we need to be very, certainly the government needs to be very careful on what it's saying around that, because it is really having a very damaging impact to the profession. You know, I've spoken to a lot of school leaders who've suffered at the hands of some of the messaging that has gone out there. it, and that is completely unacceptable, and we will not sit back and let our members be attacked in the press or on social media and via any other platform that the government chooses to use when it comes to things like making public announcements. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but when we're talking about communication, how did we find out about various, policy decisions? Well, they weren't consulted with by the trade unions. They were put on the minister's Twitter account. That is not how we do business. That is not how you correspond with a profession that has done everything as asked of them and more, and yet you're expected to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning before you head back into school, and the first thing you find out about is the wider reopening of schools when you see a Twitter alert. That's completely unacceptable.
Thank you, Laura. You've kind of answered a few of the questions that were being asked around other trade unions' thoughts and feelings and stance at the moment. Something that's coming up quite a bit in the questions is around this date of the 22nd of February, and if that is set in stone, and should schools now be fully preparing for opening the week of the 22nd of February, including informing parents of this.
I'm happy to take that. Or Rob, did you want to come in on anything?
Well, I think you can talk about the position, I think, in sort of Welsh government, but certainly, yet again, the government's pronouncements will have, given many parents sometimes false hope in regards to this. We've seen it before, and it smacks to me of what we saw at the beginning of spring term, when over the course of some political discussion, we had a Prime Minister saying that schools are safe, and then 2 days later was on telly announcing there was vectors of transmission, we had to close them down. So I think when it comes to parents and the wider stakeholders here, I think, when they look to who they trust, it's going to be you, school leaders, about the safe reopening of schools, or the wider reopening of schools. And we've already had some conversation, NEHT, about preparing some communications that will hopefully help in shaping that message for your schools, communities going forward. But listen, the arbitrary date that has been set, of course, that's an aspiration. There's a recognition, even from the minister, that this is about a phased return. Now we've got to, you're the decision makers with your governors and your local authorities, and I think it's doing it in a measured, in a considered way going forward. So don't feel compelled, is what I would say, to meet an arbitrary date unless you're satisfied that you've got all the necessary resources, the risk assessments in place. But there is some way to go on this. We're working really hard to make sure there is communication out to members. And again, we'll be sharing quite a bit with you over the course of the next few days before you break for what would be the half term.
Laura, can I just come in on just on the point that Rob has made? I think just wanted to make it clear, whatever next steps that we take as a union, I want to assure members that despite what you may read or hear or wherever your information comes from, that we are 100% committed to a wider return to school, and that whatever happens, we will continue to work with the government to try and make that a reality. Any other action that we take will run alongside, but it will not replace us engaging in positive conversations with the government. I just want to make that clear that we're certainly not withdrawing from any conversations or talks on how to find an amicable way through, because that's what we want. The end game is as safe as possible wider return to school. We're committed to doing that, and we're committed to looking at all angles of which we can use to get there.
Thank you, Laura. There's also a number of questions, and I know that I've been fielding some today as well, in relation to school settings as they're currently standing for key workers, children and vulnerable learners. There's lots of concerns about capacity. I'm not sure if you wanted to talk about the individual risk assessments and so on of the setting. Did you want to come in on that one, Laura?
Yeah, I'll come in really quickly, because I want to pass to Paula, but it's not a hospital pass. I can promise you, Paula. You know what? I'm not going to set you up. It's just that's been obviously a topic of conversation around the practicalities of supporting vulnerable children and the children of key workers in Key Stage 2, as well as the wider return of foundation phase. So there's obviously a lot of factors to take into consideration: availability of staff, availability of space, etc. How you have managed your key worker and vulnerable children bubbles. Are they in their classrooms? Are they not in their classrooms? And I think that it just comes back to the earlier point that we made around the operational guidance, is that whatever the recommendation is around mitigations, for example, has a huge impact operationally on how you structure that rider return and how you support the children of key workers and vulnerable children, and how you continue to support Key Stage 2, who will, for the time being, be supported through remote learning. So it's something that's very much on my agenda as part of a wider discussion. It's tabled for further discussion this morning. I'm only going to bring Paula in because I know that we put out some advice, Paula, haven't we, specifically around capacity concerns?
We have indeed, and we've very carefully looked at this because, of course, the risk assessment is sacrosanct. That is the document that determines whether or not it is safe for a school to open. And it is really important that all of the decision making around capacity, around mitigation of risk, is evidenced in your risk assessment. Risk assessments under the Health and Safety at Work legislation cannot ever eliminate risk. All they can do is mitigate, and therefore any layers that can be considered a mitigation of risk must be included in the risk assessment. The problem we have at the moment is that the operational guidance, I think we're now on version 5, we're expecting a new guidance, doesn't really account for some of the real issues that school leaders have to deal with in their risk assessment. And that's one of the problems that we identify on a daily basis, to be frank. So we have put some very detailed and very carefully crafted advice about risk assessments, and we have developed that advice over time for you to rely upon it. I'm looking in the chat column now. I'm hoping that Natalie may be able to put the link in there to the advice that we have put out. But our advice team are always available to deal with any individual questions that you may have in relation to that. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Paula. Just looking, lots of them are around, you know, what do we do if we don't have any updated operational guidance from Welsh Government? Are we able to, we seem to have covered quite a lot of what's being asked. I won't go through the questions individually because I really do feel that they've been addressed, and as much clarity around them has been given as we can. I'm not sure if any of the panel wanted to come in with anything further.
Just one from me, Laura, and I was just scrolling through the questions, and I saw a comment or one of the questions. One local authority, I think, has provided school leaders today with a letter to send out to parents about the 22nd to foundation phase. Obviously, I've not seen the letter. Please share it with us. But I would air caution about issuing what essentially would be a blank check. Because if you haven't got the operational guidance, you haven't got the staffing, if you haven't got the resources, you know, again, it'll be given false hope to parents. So please share with us anything that you may be sent through your local authorities. And what we will be doing is shining a light on some good practice, and I'm sure some poor practice actually when it comes to the local reaction we get from this. But hopefully, again, trying to navigate some sensible, some calm and you know, sage guidance for our members, as well as using all means necessary to protect the best interest of our members. That's what NEHT does. It protects its members, you know, but equally we're for learners. And again, just reiterating the point that Laura was making, you know, all of us have got that huge aspiration to get children, young people back in the classrooms where they belong. And we'll be working again to make that a sustainable, you know, approach and a reality.
Thank you, Rob. There is a question coming now regarding, Paula touched on the section 44, and it's asking what will happen to my staff if they still quote the section 44 regarding safety and class sizes.
So in relation to the section 44, that is an individual right. And if an individual truly believes that the school setting is not safe, then they are allowed the protection under section 44. And again, we have put advice out there for all our members about how to deal with these requests. And what we say at a time such as this is that we should deal with those requests with compassion, because we are lacking a fundamental piece of the jigsaw which would give us, our members and the staff who invoke this protection, the comfort they need, because the tag report is equivocal. So it would be very difficult for a head teacher to say that they have the answer and they have the complete picture in relation to safety. So we have the guidance there. Hopefully Natalie has done a fantastic job. I see that we have the information about risk assessments. I hope we'll have the same, well, a different link, but the same speed, having that put in the chat, which tells our members how to deal with those requests. But we would urge compassion in relation to individuals who do not feel that it's safe to return to work in the school setting.
Thank you, Paula. Just going through them now. Yeah, operational guidance again, and the urgent need for that. Somebody is asking about the public announcement in regards to change in term dates. I know that this has hit the press over holiday periods. Has there been anything in conversations with Welsh Government to you, Laura? Any announcements regarding this?
Yeah, so yes, that was a nice tweet that I saw the Minister put out about changes to term dates and possible summer schools. That was the first that the trade unions had heard anything about it, so it was nice to see that from her. So that day, we went into a Welsh Government officials meeting where we raised again the issue of communication, again the poor use of keeping the trade unions informed, and in the spirit of social partnership, it would have been nice to at least have a heads up that this is coming down the track rather than to find it out on social media, to which Welsh Government officials replied, we don't know anything about it either. So either they were being truthful, or they really didn't know that the Minister and the comms team had tweeted that. There has been no official discussion around it at all. I did speak to Kirsty today, and it was mentioned on the call to say that how can I put this diplomatically? We quickly put that matter aside while I pressed her for some information on the here and now, and tabled that for further discussion. But to say that I made the feelings clear of our members that you deserve a break, you need a break. And that if the Minister is to be believed by the other posts that she puts around well-being of head teachers and school staff in general, then we need to have further discussion before she puts any other announcements on Twitter. And I did make the point that actually it leads to further anxiety, and it's not helpful.
Absolutely, and that's echoed in a few of the comments here. The next question really is around expectations of foundation phase to social distance, and it also mentions that they understand, another one goes on to say that Welsh Government are issuing improved PPE for schools, and clarification around the testing twice weekly. Have we had any further details on that, Laura, please?
Yeah, so I'll take them as I remember them, so if I forget, let me know. So in terms of PPE, so a conversation today was around face coverings that are going to be supplied by schools and are allegedly being ordered by the WLGA. There's no information as yet as to when they will be available. Obviously, at the urging of all the trade unions, that any additional PPE should be available and ready at school settings for a phased return from the 22nd of February. The same conversation was had around testing. So obviously we welcome the 2 weekly testing, although there is still some question marks over the efficacy of testing in general. But the general principle of an additional mitigation measure we welcome. Where are the tests? was the question, and we don't know was the answer. So hopefully those tests will become available. But again, this goes back to the, back to my original point of, we hear these sweeping statements from government around the testing, which we welcome, around additional PPE, which we also welcome, but we don't actually have that yet. And until we have it, I reserve judgment to be, to welcome it fully. An additional point that I'll make is around the extra funding. So the £5 million extra funding was a surprise in the Friday announcement. It wasn't mentioned to trade unions beforehand, but it was welcomed. However, again, I still have questions around how you access it. So we know that schools were told several times by Welsh Government, and we've continued to go back and forth on this, that additional money would be made available to schools via local authorities to fund COVID-related costs. And we know that there has been a huge variation across Wales in how successful you have been in able to access that fund. So originally we were told it was all COVID related costs. Then we were told it was specific COVID related costs, and there was a list. Then we went down the ridiculous rabbit hole of talking about schools having to justify that they hadn't made any savings during the pandemic before they were able to access any funding. So, what we want and what we think our members deserve in the operational guidance is, if there's £5 million available for additional staff, let's have the detail of exactly how we access it. £5 million is great, but how will that be split up between schools? Will there be a cap? What's the criteria? All these questions need to be answered before, I would suggest, making a public statement that additional money is going to school, but there's actually no detail on how you get to it.
Thank you, Laura. And as if by magic and hot off the press, I've just had in the inbox Bing, and it is around the testing. And this goes on to say that all education settings will be offered the testing. However, this is, you do have to opt in. It's not automatic, so you will have to opt in, and there's an email, and I imagine all school leaders will be receiving this. It also says that these are twice weekly tests for school setting staffs that will be complete at home. So these are tests that school staff will actually be taking home to complete themselves. But that's just literally landed in my inbox, so a bit of information there.
Laura, can I just come back in on that? I don't suppose it gives any detail as to, when they say school staff, are we talking all school staff, or does it, are we going to go down the ridiculous of head teachers having to decide who gets the tests again, because we've already been down that road once before and we don't particularly want to go down there again?
Without looking further into the attachments, which it just names education settings. It doesn't go into further than that from the initial onset.
Okay, so that's something that we'll feed back to members at a later date. So we'll go through the information that's been sent out to us. We'll also circulate the link of how you opt in. We'll circulate that and offer any additional support if members need it.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've kind of answered everything that has been asked. Lots of comments around the test and the portability of a test and having lateral flow tests. Lots of comments around will school settings actually be ready with a test with the PPE by the 22nd of February. I think we've kind of answered everything from what I can see in a roundabout way. So thank you for everyone for issuing those. I'll hand back over to Laura if I can, please.
Thanks, Laura. I'm just really conscious that we've had a number of meetings with school leaders of special schools and PRUs over the last couple of weeks that have been really useful in framing our views around special schools and PRUs. Just wanted to take the opportunity to feed back to those members who may be on the call this afternoon. The points that we discussed at the meeting last week around attendance. So I think that was a hotly contentious issue when we talked around attendance, and Welsh Government was bandying around various figures of attendance. I've gone back and made the specific points that were raised by you around attendance, and the fact that if an average attendance showed 35% at at a special school or a PRU, that was not necessarily the same learners. In some schools, it was up to 50, 60, 70% of learners had been back in throughout the week. I've gone back and made that specific point and asked for some additional information from Welsh Government around, you know, what do they make of that? Two, are we going to have any specific additional guidance for special schools and PRUs, and what will the wider foundation phase return mean for those settings? Because at the moment, all we seem to get is a kind of a cursory throwaway line in a statement that says, oh, and by the way, special schools or PRUs are expected to either carry on as normal or increase capacity. I just wanted to let members know that I continue to bang that drum, and I hope to have, I think we may already have, or if not, we're scheduling another meeting with special school leaders and PRU heads, just to make sure that we are putting your views across.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to Owen, who has just confirmed that, yeah, all staff within the education setting are eligible for the test. But of course, this will be on an individual basis as to whether they wish to take it up. But school leaders will be expected to strongly encourage others to undertake the tests. So I think we're about to come to the 45-minute mark, and I'd like to pass over to Rob now, if I can, please. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Laura, and I'm obviously watching the chat function and the questions coming through, but I just want to just say from the National Union, and again repeat what the points I was making earlier, that's really important that, you know, as a profession, we look after ourselves, we look after one another, and you look after yourself. You know, this will be, you know, an half-term break that once again is going to be, you know, a period in which there's going to be great uncertainty, and lots of us are working again really hard to ensure again that you're given that information. I just want to say that NEHT Cymru, its staff, its local executive, its national executive, you know, are working and meeting literally many times a week now, just to sort of ensure again that we have that sage guidance and support. NEHT, your union, is here to support you, to protect you. And I'd urge, you know, you in those moments that you've got that uncertainty, that contradiction of advice, to reach out and to take that advice from whether it's your NHC Cymru office or it's a group of colleagues working out of the national office. They're there to support, to protect and serve you as school leaders, and we'll be working flat out before the end of this week just to make sure you've got the latest information and guidance that we can possibly bring forward. So just as I say, from NHC National, great to be on the call, and so good to see so many people joining us as well this evening. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Rob. I think we'll bring the broadcast to an end there. I'm not sure if anybody else wanted to give any closing remarks. Laura, did you want to come in?
I'll just come in and just to say once again, thanks everyone for taking the time out to join us this afternoon, and reiterate my further points that we are working flat out to get the many questions that you've posed answered. We are exploring all options when it comes to making sure that a wider return to school is as safe as it can be, and we continue to do that. Please, you know, don't ever hesitate to pick up the phone, to speak to the Wales team, speak to your branch secretaries. We want to hear from you. We're here to support you. And I hope to be able to bring you some updates further in the week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Laura. So all that's left for me really is to say thank you to everybody who's attended this evening. Remember that we are here, as Laura says, please do not hesitate to contact us. Please remember that we also have a special ed advice team that is on hand. Contact details can be found online, along with a 24/7 counselling service. Please take care and hwyl fawr. Thank you once again. Bye now.